Stop asking how much longer it will take for your life to change. Ask yourself something harder. If the right opportunity appeared this week, would the version of you sitting here recognize it, trust it, and act on it? Chosen one. That question changes everything. You may not be 10 years away from the life you keep seeing in your mind. You may be one real decision away, but that decision cannot come from the same state that keeps doubting, delaying, and asking for one more sign. Look at your own life. How many times have you known what to do, then watched yourself negotiate with that knowing until the moment became smaller? You meant to send the message. You meant to start the project. You meant to answer the opportunity. Then another thought appeared. That is not automatically laziness. It is not proof that you lack intelligence. Sometimes the problem is the gap between recognizing a direction and moving while that direction is still clear. I call it the decision gap. Once you see it, you will recognize it everywhere. It is there in the email you wait days to answer. It is there in the idea you research until the excitement dies. It is there when you ask for guidance, receive a clear inner response, then demand more signs before you move. Sometimes you are postponing a decision you already understand. A real decision is not the moment you say you should do something. It begins when you stop reopening the choice every time fear asks for another hearing. That is when your behavior starts matching what you say you want. So keep one question with you. What do you already know that you are pretending requires more information? Do not rush past that question. It may expose the exact place where your next chapter has been waiting. The life you want does not always arrive as a dramatic miracle. Sometimes it appears as one conversation, one application, one invitation, one decision to stop tolerating what drains you. The doorway can look ordinary, while walking through it changes everything that follows. The condition of the receiver matters. An opportunity you cannot clearly recognize can feel almost identical to an opportunity that never came. A direction you cannot trust can feel like no direction at all. Later, I will return to research connected to how different parts of the brain process information. It touches a question many adults quietly carry. Why did my mind seem freer, faster, and more creative before life became so complicated? First, see the pattern in your own life. If you can recognize the decision gap without defending it, you can begin changing how you respond when something real appears. If this feels familiar, make one small commitment now. Comment, I choose clearly. Not because a comment changes your life, but because naming a decision separates conscious choice from automatic delay. Stay with me. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it becomes patient, sophisticated, and convincing. Sometimes it learns to speak in the voice of wisdom, and that is when your old life becomes hardest to leave. You have probably called it confusion before. You felt the pull towards something new, then your mind produced 10 reasons to wait. One reason sounded practical, another sounded responsible. Soon the energy was gone, and you told yourself you needed more clarity. But clarity and certainty are not the same thing. Clarity tells you what appears true now. Certainty demands proof about a future that has not happened yet. When certainty becomes the price of action, almost every meaningful decision becomes easy to postpone. This is where the decision gap becomes expensive. You understand enough to move, but you keep reopening the case. You ask one more person, you watch one more video, you compare one more option. Those actions become a hiding place when the real question has already been answered inside you. Looking back, you may notice something uncomfortable. You were not equally confused every day. There were moments when you KNEW. The answer became simple for a few seconds. Then the cost of choosing appeared, and confusion returned. That changes the way you interpret your past. Sometimes the problem was not missing information. Sometimes you were protecting yourself from the consequences of becoming clear. Once you admit what you know, the old excuse becomes harder to keep. So use a different question. Ask, What do I genuinely need to know before I decide? Then make the answer specific. If you cannot name the missing information, you may not be gathering facts anymore. You may be feeding delay. And there is another layer. The human mind often prefers what is familiar, even when the familiar is painful. A known problem can feel safer than an unknown possibility, because at least you understand its rules. That is why a real exit can create anxiety. Here is a simple test. When you feel yourself delaying, separate the information problem from the decision problem. Ask, is there one concrete fact I still need? Or am I waiting for a feeling of total safety that no serious choice can provide? That question can save months. It can also reveal how often your old life survives by making hesitation look intelligent. Fear can even learn spiritual language. Waiting can sound like patience. Avoidance can sound like discernment. Retreat can sound like protecting your peace. Remember one phrase: familiar is not destiny. What you have repeated is not automatically what you are meant to keep repeating. What feels normal is not automatically what is aligned. Now, there is a deeper reason I am bringing this up. Some people can identify the correct direction and still struggle because their internal state feels scattered. Their attention is divided. Their thinking becomes noisy. Their intuition says one thing, while analysis produces competing stories. Later, we will look at a neurological angle connected to that experience, not as proof of destiny, and not as a magical explanation for every struggle. I want to show you why the condition of the receiver may matter when a real decision arrives. For now, think of the choice you keep postponing. Do not decide this second, just identify what is actually missing. Is it information, or is it permission? If you cannot tell the difference, the next pattern will help, because your old life does not always hold you with chains. Sometimes it holds you with comfort, repetition, and the quiet promise that tomorrow will feel safer than today. That promise can keep a capable person waiting for years. There is a reason familiar pain can survive for so long. It already has a map. You know where the disappointment lives. You know what the excuses sound like. You know how to recover after another week of doing nothing different. The unfamiliar future has no map yet. That is why possibility can feel more threatening than repetition. A new opportunity asks you to become someone before you have proof that the new version will be rewarded. Your old life asks for another delay. I call this the familiar life bias. It is the tendency to treat what you know as safer than what you have not yet lived. That bias can be useful when real danger is present, but it becomes a prison when familiarity is mistaken for alignment. The pattern is subtle because old choice feels reasonable. You tell yourself the timing is wrong. You say you need another month. You promise that you will move when you feel more confident. Then confidence demands another condition. Resistance after a decision does not automatically mean the decision is wrong. Sometimes, resistance appears because the choice threatens a pattern your nervous system already knows how to survive. For the next 48 hours, try a simple decision audit. When you notice yourself postponing something important, ask one question. Do I need more information, or am I searching for a new reason to delay what is already clear? Keep the answer concrete. If you need information, name the exact fact. If you need time, name what that time will help you evaluate. If you cannot name either, notice what happens next. This is why intelligent people can become trapped in overthinking. Intelligence gives the mind more material to work with. It can generate more possibilities, more warnings, and more imagined futures. Without a stopping point, analysis becomes an endless room. More thinking does not always create more clarity. Sometimes it creates more distance from the first clear signal you had. The goal is not to think less. The goal is to know when thinking has finished its job. A divided internal state can make every important choice feel louder than it needs to feel. One part of you recognizes the opening, Another predicts danger. Another searches the past for proof. Soon, one decision feels like several competing conversations. People often start calling themselves broken, indecisive, or spiritually blocked. But those labels do not help. They turn a temporary pattern into an identity. What if the issue is not that you have no signal? What if too much noise is competing with it? That question leads toward the deeper mechanism we will examine later. There is a neurological angle connected to how information is processed and integrated. I will return to it when the foundation is clear. Notice something simpler. The quality of a decision depends partly on the condition from which you make it. A tired mind sees options differently. A fearful mind evaluates risk differently. A scattered mind can miss what a calmer mind notices. Remember this: familiar is not destiny. Repetition is not prophecy. Discomfort is not always danger. Hesitation is not always wisdom. Your next life may begin before you feel ready for it. You stop asking whether the new path feels familiar and start asking whether it is true. In the next part, we will examine something people misunderstand. You may not have lost the sharpness, creativity, and inner clarity you once felt. You may have lost easy access to them, and that difference changes everything. You may have noticed something strange about yourself. There were seasons when your mind felt lighter. Ideas came faster. Curiosity moved before fear could interrupt it. You could imagine a possibility without immediately building a case against it. Then life became more complicated. Responsibility increased. Mistakes carried more weight. Other people had opinions. You learned to monitor yourself, compare yourself, and question impulses that once felt natural. Over time, thinking became less like discovery and more like defense. That does not mean adulthood destroyed your gift. It may mean access became harder. There is a difference between losing an ability and losing reliable access to that ability. One feels permanent, the other can be examined. Think about how you behave when something excites you now. An idea appears. For one moment, you can see exactly what it could become. Then the internal review begins. Is it realistic? What will people think? What if I fail? What if I succeed and everything changes? Soon, the original signal is buried under analysis. The mind that was trying to protect you has created so much friction that movement becomes difficult. You call that maturity. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it is fear wearing a very educated face. Here is the first reframe. Maybe you are not trying to manufacture a new mind. Maybe you are learning how to stop interfering with capacities that are already present. That changes the goal from becoming someone else to restoring access to yourself. Picture two people facing the same opportunity. One has researched every possible outcome. The other has enough information to understand the risk, the upside, and the next step. The first person keeps comparing. The second person decides. Who moves first? Not always the person with more information. Sometimes the person who can integrate what they know has the advantage. Intelligence matters, knowledge matters, but neither one automatically produces a decision. That is why more information can become a trap for capable people. Your mind can generate endless scenarios because it has the ability to do so. The question is whether those scenarios are helping you choose or helping you avoid the discomfort of choosing. Now imagine a different moment. An email arrives with a serious opportunity. You read it once. Your body reacts, but you do not panic. You ask what matters. You check the facts. You notice the fear, but you do not give fear control of the entire process. Then you answer. Not recklessly. Not because you believe every door is meant for you. You answer because you can separate signal from noise, and because you trust yourself enough to make a conscious decision. That is the kind of life people notice from the outside. They may call it confidence. They may call it luck. They may only see the result. What they do not see is the internal shift that happened before the visible change. The life people will not believe is yours starts becoming believable when your choices stop contradicting what you say you want. That does not require perfection. It requires enough coherence to move when movement is justified. And this brings us to the deeper question: what if intelligence is not the bottleneck? What if the real bottleneck is the ability to bring different streams of information into one usable decision? In the next part, we are going to name that state. It is the place where intuition, analysis, memory, fear, and possibility all compete for control. When that receiver becomes fragmented, even a clear opportunity can feel impossible to trust. There is a state that many people know but rarely know how to describe. Your intuition says yes. Your analytical mind says wait. Your memory brings up every time something went wrong. Your imagination produces both the best outcome and the worst one. Too many signals are speaking at once. I call this the fragmented receiver. It is not a diagnosis. It is a simple way to describe what happens when information does not feel integrated enough to support a clear response. They say, I am broken. I am indecisive. I cannot trust myself. They turn a difficult state into a permanent identity. But information alone does not solve fragmentation. You can read more and collect more opinions. If those inputs never settle into one coherent picture, more information can increase the noise instead of reducing it. Think about discernment. It is the ability to weigh what matters without being controlled by every thought that appears. That requires a receiver clear enough to notice differences between fear, evidence, impulse, and genuine alignment. This is why a spiritual conversation that ignores the condition of the mind can become incomplete. Neuroscience does not prove spirituality. It means the state of your attention and cognition can influence how you interpret what is happening around you. A tired mind evaluates options differently. A stressed mind can overestimate danger. A scattered mind can miss details that a calmer mind would notice. None of that makes you weak. It means the condition of the receiver matters. Remember the question from earlier. What if you did not lose your signal? What if too much noise has been competing with it? That is where this moves beyond motivation. And now we return to something I promised earlier. There is a neurological angle connected to how different parts of the brain process information and how integration can affect the experience of thinking. We are not going to turn that into a miracle claim. First, understand the shape of the problem. You can have intelligence without coherence. You can have intuition without confidence. You can have information without a decision. The missing piece is often not more input, but a better state for integrating the input you already have. This may explain why 1 hour can feel brilliant and the next can feel foggy. The same person and life are present, but the internal condition has changed and the quality of recognition changes with it. Here is the midpoint truth. Maybe the signs were not always missing. Maybe the internal noise was too loud. At the moment, a sign required a response. That possibility should not make you regret the past. It should change what you prepare for next. Because the next opportunity does not need you to become fearless. It needs you to become clear enough to evaluate it. That is a different goal. Fear can exist while clarity remains available. And there is one more layer. The important discovery is not simply that the brain has 2 hemispheres. Most people already know that. The useful question is what happens when different modes of processing work together. We will come back to that soon. Before we do, we need to face the most painful part of this entire message. Sometimes the opportunity was closer than you realized. The issue was not always whether a door existed. The issue was whether you could recognize the door while it was open. Think back carefully. There may be moments that look different now than they did when you lived them. A conversation you dismissed, an introduction you did not follow, a project you delayed, an invitation that felt too uncertain. so you let it pass. This does not mean every missed moment was destiny. It does not mean every closed door would have made you rich, happy, or fulfilled. But it does reveal something important. Opportunity existing and opportunity being recognized are not the same thing. I call this the recognition window. It is the period when something real is available to notice, evaluate, and respond to. If your attention is scattered or your fear is running the process, that window can close before a decision becomes clear. That changes the question. Instead of asking, "Why does nothing ever happen for me?" ask something more useful. What condition do I want to be in when something real does happen? That question returns power without pretending you control every outcome. Your past may contain moments when the signal was present, but your state was not ready to use it. Do not turn that into shame. Use it as information. The goal is not to become a person who says yes to everything. The goal is to become someone who can notice, evaluate, and decide. Notice what is actually happening. Evaluate the facts and the cost. Decide without handing the final vote to panic, habit, or endless delay. Notice, evaluate, decide. That is a cleaner pattern than notice, panic, seek 10 signs, ask 5 people, delay for 2 weeks, and then call the lost moment bad luck. Now the whole message can be reduced to a few simple ideas. The decision gap is the space between knowing and moving. The familiar life bias makes repetition feel safer than change. The fragmented receiver makes useful signals compete with internal noise. And the recognition window explains why an opportunity can exist without becoming part of your life. You cannot act on what you do not recognize clearly enough to evaluate. So who are you becoming through this? Not someone waiting to be rescued, not someone chasing every shiny door. You are becoming the recognizer, the person who can see more clearly and respond deliberately. That identity matters because clarity is not about saying yes more often. Sometimes clarity says no. Sometimes it says not yet. Sometimes it says, this is worth exploring. The power is in making the decision consciously. Here is the emotional center of everything we have covered. You do not need to chase every door. You need enough clarity to know which door deserves your hand on the handle. And now we can finally return to the question I opened earlier. What if the receiver itself can be supported toward greater integration? What if there is a practical method designed around that idea? That is where the next part goes. We will look at the research line connected to hemispheric processing, the mechanism described by the product team, and the reason this matters before you make any decision about it. The research line we are returning to begins with work on how the 2 hemispheres of the brain process information. One of the best-known names connected to that work is Dr. Roger Sperry, who received the Nobel Prize in 1981 for discoveries related to the functional specialization of the cerebral hemispheres. That research did not study the product I am about to mention. It did not prove that any audio program can transform a life. It matters here because different modes of processing can contribute in distinct ways, and integration affects cognition. If the receiver matters, then supporting a more integrated mental state becomes a practical question, not a mystical promise, not a guarantee of wealth. A question about whether a person can feel clearer and less internally divided. The product team behind the Genius Switch describes their method around that idea. They call it neural sync technology, designed to support what they describe as whole brain activation through an 8-minute auditory sequence. Before I explain the offer, consider 2 reported experiences shared in the product materials. One woman from California described feeling mentally foggy and as if life was happening to her. After using the program, she reported greater clarity, less stress, and a noticeable shift in daily life. A man from Texas described heavy responsibilities while feeling persistently foggy and mentally divided. He reported that after using the audio, he felt clearer and more like his mind was working together. Those are their reported experiences, not a guarantee of what anyone else will experience. The product is called the Genius Switch. It is a digital audio program built around an 8-minute listening sequence. According to the product presentation, it is designed by Dr. Daniel Barone and his team around the concept of supporting neural synchronization. It is not presented as a standard meditation session. It does not require a mantra. It does not ask you to spend 20 minutes controlling your breathing. It is also positioned differently from common binaural beat or frequency tracks. If you have tried audio before, the point is not that every other method is useless. This program is presented around a different mechanism and a much shorter daily routine. And this is where the identity of this message returns. This is not for someone who wants to hand responsibility to a product. It is for someone who is done treating fog, hesitation, and internal conflict as a permanent identity. Your first decision does not need to be dramatic. It can be this: I am willing to evaluate whether there is a practical way to support the condition from which I make my other decisions. The current product page lists the Genius Switch at $49, with a current offer of $39. It also includes 4 bonuses: a guided visualization, a smart grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The page also describes lifetime access and a money-back guarantee. You can read the details, examine the terms, and decide whether the method makes sense for you. If $39 feels like money you should not spend casually, do not buy because a video made you emotional. Read the official page, check what is included. Decide from clarity. If you have tried audio before, do not assume this is identical without reading how they describe it. If it sounds too good to be true, do not force belief. Examine it. Skepticism and curiosity can exist together. There is no need for fake urgency. You do not need to panic because a clock is running down. But notice the pattern. If your automatic response is, "I will look at it later," while never making a real decision, that would be the decision gap showing up in real time. This does not mean you should buy. It means you should decide consciously. Yes, no, or I need one specific piece of information before I decide. If you want to evaluate the Genius Switch for yourself, the official page is linked in the description and pinned comment. Use the official source, read the details, and make your own decision. Whether you use that tool or not, do not miss the larger point. This entire message has been about the way you decide. A product cannot make every choice for you. No method should become another place where you surrender responsibility. The deeper shift is learning to notice when your old pattern appears. You recognize something, you feel the pull. Then, delay enters quietly and asks for another day. That is where the decision gap tries to rebuild itself. The irony would be hearing this entire message, recognizing yourself in every pattern, finding something you genuinely want to investigate, and then automatically saying, "I will do it later." That would not prove you should buy anything. It would simply show you the pattern in real time. So, make a decision. Yes, no. Or, I need one specific piece of information. Those are all conscious answers. Endless postponement is not the same as careful evaluation. If the Genius Switch interests you, remember the basics. It is presented as an 8-minute daily audio program built around neural synchronization. The official page explains the method and terms. You do not need to believe every claim before you read it. You do not need to become emotionally convinced. Evaluate it, like the recognizer. Ask what is being offered, what evidence is presented, what the terms are, and whether it fits your situation. And if your answer is no, let it be a clear no. If your answer is yes, let it be a clear yes. If one fact is missing, identify that fact. Clarity is not about forcing yourself toward a particular outcome. That is the identity we have been building. The recognizer does not chase every door. The recognizer does not hide from every door either. You notice, you evaluate, you decide. Think about how much energy disappears when every open loop remains open. One unfinished choice follows you into the next morning. Soon your mind is carrying unresolved decisions that keep asking for attention. If you have stayed with this message this far, you have already seen more than one layer of the pattern. You have seen the decision gap. You have seen the familiar life bias. You have seen how internal noise can distort the recognition window. Now the question is not whether you understand the concepts. The question is whether you will use them when the next moment becomes uncomfortable. Knowledge without application can become another sophisticated form of delay. So do not turn this into another thing you know. Use it today. Choose one unresolved decision and define the next clear action. Send the message, gather the missing fact, say no, say yes, or set the exact condition that will determine your answer. If you want to examine the genius switch, the official page is in the description and pinned comment. Read it before you decide. The point is not to rush you. The point is to stop unconscious hesitation from deciding for you. And before this ends, there is one declaration I want you to make. It has nothing to do with buying anything. It has everything to do with the life you are done postponing. Change is not always dramatic. Sometimes it begins quietly. A thought becomes clear. A pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Then one decision creates a line between who you were and who you are willing to become. Look at what you have carried. The waiting, the second-guessing, the moments when you blamed yourself for not moving faster. You do not need to keep punishing that version of you, but survival cannot remain the final identity. There comes a moment when protection becomes limitation. There comes a moment when familiar pain asks for loyalty, and you finally understand that loyalty to the old version of you is costing the future. Release the need for perfect certainty. Release the belief that delay always means wisdom. Release the shame attached to choices you did not make. You are allowed to evaluate carefully. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change direction. But you are no longer required to live inside endless hesitation. Chosen one, name the identity that replaces it. Not one built on fantasy, not one that pretends fear disappears. An identity built on conscious response. I am the one who decides clearly. I do not confuse fear with wisdom. I do not confuse delay with preparation. I can examine an opportunity without worshipping it. Say no without guilt. I can say yes without apologizing for growth. I can gather facts without hiding inside research. I can trust myself to decide when the information is enough. My past hesitation does not own my next choice. My old patterns do not get the final vote. I can notice fear without obeying it. I am no longer rehearsing the life I want. I am becoming the person capable of living it. I choose awareness over autopilot. I choose clarity over endless noise. I choose conscious movement over familiar delay. If you are ready to seal that decision, comment, I choose clearly. Let those words mean that unconscious hesitation will no longer answer important questions for you. Now return to the question from the beginning. If the right opportunity appeared this week, would you recognize it, trust your evaluation, and act? You do not need to promise that the answer will always be yes. The answer can be more grounded. I will no longer let unconscious hesitation answer for me. That is enough to change how you meet the next conversation, idea, invitation, and decision. If the genius switch is something you want to investigate, use the official page in the description or pinned comment. Read it, evaluate it, decide for yourself, then close the loop. The life people will not believe is yours does not begin when other people believe in you. It begins when your decisions stop protecting the life you keep saying you are ready to leave. You do not need another version of yourself to arrive first. Stop abandoning the clear moments when they come. Notice, evaluate, decide, then move with what you know. This is your line in the sand. No pressure, no promise, every door will open. Just an agreement that when clarity arrives, you will not automatically trade it for fear. I choose clearly. I recognize what matters. I decide consciously. I move without asking my old life for permission. Sealed.